looking into the POC project steps, and then to correlate the POC deliverables with our activity in our package. After which we will be learning a little overview about the security authorization and perform the steps of creating our own user IDs. So there are certain advanced steps that we'll be able to learn tonight. All right, so we start with the studio and check into our package. Right, so yesterday we were able to copy two views from another package, and I believe you were able to practice that particular with the subfolder contents copying the views into your package, and then we were able to create the attribute view and the time-based attribute view. And then we started with our first analytic view. Now, we will be checking our project POC document and be able to relate the steps that we've done so far with the deliverables that are defined in the outline document of the project that we intend to work together for this training program. So let's check the Excel spreadsheet. Now, the Excel spreadsheet here will give us an outline on the deliverables of this particular POC small project that we will be working together. In fact, we've already started creating those two attribute views and the analytic views. So let's have a quick look here in this particular outline document. And we see here in this Excel that there is a consumer products retail company, and there is a scenario for the sales, and the source system of that client company is an SAP ERP source. And we remember that we were able to check the SD11 transaction code, right? So this is where it's marked with a highlight yellow color, SD11, in the SAP ERP source. So once you go in there, we were able to check out the interrelation between the submodules of the SAP ERP and finding the tables, that we have practiced. The next are all the deliverables that are expected from the project POC from this spreadsheet. So the first one here is the sales and profitability analysis. This is a combined package that is required as a deliverable. So in our package, we have a Z underscore package underscore the supply chain management underscore PR getting created. And in there, you'll be able to see those attribute views, analytic and calculation views to offer us the sales with the financial analysis together in one master package. The next deliverable that we will also learn is the security. The security authorization is where we should be able to perform user management, roles management, create users, roles, grant, revoke, and other activities of the SNA, security authorization. This is the second deliverable. So tonight we will be completing the first deliverable and going into the second deliverable of SNA. Now let's shift to the right-hand side of the screen in this Excel. In column K, we have the steps identified for this deliverable. So you're going to have a customer master, a product master, and a COPA module, a transactional table with the KPIs. So you see here, for the customer master in column L, we have got in the KNA1 table in our package as the data foundation for the customer attribute view. For the next one here, product master, we were able to bring in Mara, the material master, and connected the material table with a MAKT for the material description. And we were able to create yesterday our first analytic view with this table, CE1 IDEA. This is the COPA module table, which has got the KPIs for both the sales and the profitability analysis. With the enhancements that we performed, we were also able to derive the net revenue, and then we were also able to create the restricted column where we restricted the gross revenue for country equals the US. Those are the other calculations that we did. And then we were also able to create the customer hierarchy in our customer master data. We will also check that again. So these are the steps for this project POC that we've already started working on. As far as the naming standards are concerned, you can go back here to column K, and we see here package name should be starting with Z underscore package underscore the name, and then underscore initial of the developer. Then we also created the attribute view, ZAT underscore view underscore name, and then yesterday we started creating our first analytic view with this naming standard, ZAN underscore view underscore name of the view. Likewise, we will also learn about creating calculation view tonight and then proceed further with the analysis authorization. We also remember for the naming standard, we could either start with a Z or an X or maybe or a Y as a prefix. Z objects are those objects which are created by the consultant, system integrator. The X objects are those objects which are created for temporary workaround solutions. And the Y objects are directly created by the customers. Okay, so this is the area that we started working on with our package. So if you look at the center of this particular outline document from column F, you have here tables for master data, which is used for attribute view that goes for customer master and product master. Likewise, transactional table for analytic view. Tonight, for calculation view, we will learn if there is a requirement to combine more than one transactional fact tables. In those cases, we will be able to unify with the help of calculation views. Okay, so this is the project POC that we will be working together. In fact, we've started working, creating the objects with our package in subpackage 01. Now, let's perform a quick recap of the steps that we've done yesterday for the analytic view. An analytic view is a logical view which will have the transactional table as the fact table with the KPIs and other dimension attribute views. In our example yesterday, we started with the customer and the material attribute views, and then we were able to bring on those two attribute views by drag and drop from a package into this logical join. And then later, we were also able to bring in this particular time dimension view here with the posting date and connect it. And then when we run the data preview, we're also able to check from a time data standpoint to get those KPIs. So when you run the data preview, for example, let's get into, year-wise, quarter-wise, net revenue, for example. So this is the financial data related display. Okay. And then the gross revenue herein. So this helps to get the time-related data from either the Gregorian or the fiscal, depending upon your requirement, drag and drop the view after you create the time-based subtype attribute view, and then drop into the design and connect with the respective key fields, and then run the data preview. We also remember yesterday that by default, the max number of rows here for the data preview is 5,000. Now, what if we want to increase more than 5,000, for example? If there is a scenario that a user who's also interested to work in studio along with your consultants and team may want to see 10,000 rows. We know by default it's just 5,000. But they're looking at 10,000 rows or 100,000 rows. So in order to increase the number of max rows in the data preview for any view, we go here up in the menu bar, in Window, click, and then click the Preferences. The Preferences is where we have ways to design the screen in the way how it should appear, the theme, the color, the font size, etc. And we go, scroll down here below, go here into the SAP HANA, expand, and then we select here modeler, expand it, and then we click here data preview. So when you click here data preview, it indicates that it is only 5,000 as the max number of rows by default, which is recommended. However, if there is a need to look into the records beyond 5,000 max number of rows, we just have to select this radio button. Let's do it. Click, apply, click OK. That will close the preference screen for you. And then we close this. And then run the data preview again. All right. So here we're able to see that the box size increased from 5,000 and you got other spaces. So we can put here 500,000 and refresh, for example, for the raw data. Yep. So we're looking at 17,000 rows, which is coming in from the transactional table values. Although it was 5,000 that we had restricted access with the standard data preview max rows, but if you increase, you'll be able to see a little more data set as far as the max rows that you define here. A very common interview question and a certification exam question. How do you reset or increase the number of max rows to over 5,000? This is how you do it. And another interview question is, what is the default maximum number of rows for data preview in HANA? Answer is 5,000 by default, but you can increase by the steps through preferences settings. Next, yesterday we were also able to look at the ways to export the data from the preview into a local file. If you remember the steps, we just had to click select this and the text file, select a folder location where you want to export, and we did that into the documents folder, and then selected our folder, Excel folder, and then we were also able to see an export. For example, this is what we have here as a export from the preview from the view. Similarly, you can also export the image file and share that image with other users or developers. Yep. So let's reconfirm the design from the Excel. So for our first deliverable for the sales and profitability, we wanted to have a customer master data with a KN1 table and the customer hierarchy. And for the products, we wanted to have the MARA table connected with the MAKT for the product description. And then the CE1 table from COPA, which consists of the KPIs. Yeah, the KPIs like the gross revenue deductions that we picked up yesterday. And then we were able to create further restricted and calculated columns. Okay. All right. Then the last part was to able to generate an auto documentation for our view. If you have practiced that particular step, this is how we did for the view, particular view. You can select this icon here at the upper right hand toolbar to click here auto documentation. So when you click, it will select the view. You can also select other package, other views, and create auto documentation for other packages as well. But now we are interested for this particular view. Select here browse. We wanted to send the auto documentation to our folder, for example, documents, my documents, and then here, and click OK, and click here on finish. Let's pull up the job log. At the right hand corner, you'll be able to see the job log. So here auto documentation is going on as we speak. Status is running, and it is converting the technical design of our view into a readable PDF format. Okay, so let's go to the Documents folder, select Excel folder, go in here, Analytic View, open this PDF document, and then you have a standard SAP template-based auto documentation. This auto documentation could later be used for your sign-off with your sponsor, project sponsors, your consultant, functional consultant, or your counterpart customers or clients, or a respective consulting firm. You can upload it into SAP Solution Manager or project management systems, and then you can go further for the next step of creating security authorization and transporting the views. Yep. The auto documentation will give you the complete detail as far as the technical definition is concerned. The mappings, the type, subtype, technical name, type, the field length, and the participating views as a dimension, connection, joins, input parameter, hierarchies, where used list, and cross-references. This is a very interesting document for your project implementation. Yep. So this is what we've done yesterday. Tonight, we will further learn about the types of the joints when we connect and map the views or fields together. So we see that we have these lines connecting into the data foundation. And when you click on this line, it gives us the properties onto the right-hand side here. And in this particular property, you see the join type is shown as referential join. And in SAP HANA by default, please make a note, by default, all the joins are referential joins in HANA data modeling for the views. There are other types of joins that are also possible, which are as follows. If you click here in the drop down, you see other joins possible as an inner join, outer join, or a text join. But by default, it is a referential join. Now let's try and understand why referential join and what is a referential join. Let's go a level into the detail. So I'm going to make a note here. Joins in a database. Okay, so in a database we have something called as an inner join, which is the intersection join from the arithmetics, right? So you have a set A, for example, let's directly draw it on here. So you have a set A and set B, for example, and set A's got x1, x2, and y1, for example, and set B has got x1, x2, y1, and y2. So when you run the intersection between these two, the result will be these two matching identical matching fields. That's an intersection. That's an inner join in a database. So x1, x2, and y1. So the intersection join is the inner join, and it will always pick up matching fields. Let's go to the next type of the join, outer join in database. An outer join is what we have as a union in the arithmetic. So, for example, set A, set B with the values in here. So we have x1, x2, y1. Set B has got x1, x2, y1, and y2, for example. So the union between these two will give us all of the values. So union will give us x1, x2, y1, and y2. That's the result of the union join. That is what we have in a database as an outer join. It could be a left outer, right outer. Those are the subtypes. Next, in a database, we also have a text join, which is for mapping the descriptions. All right. So, for example, there is a table T1, and it's got values like x1, x2, x3, and then you have table T2, TD2 for text description. In this particular table, we have here X1 with another column as description D1, X2 is description D2, X3 is description D3, for example. So we connect those together like this. And then we'll be able to derive the description D1, D2, D3 for X1, X2, X3. That's a text join in a database. In any traditional RDBMS, DBMS. In SAP HANA, we can also have these joins, unique joins, but in HANA, by default, there is the referential join, which is also present in other traditional databases, a referential integrity join in Oracle, SQL, DB2, etc. The referential join or the referential integrity join will comprise of certain properties of the inner join, properties of the outer, certain properties of the text, plus integrity check. So it is a mix of all of these joins, and it will always ensure that we have the integrity between those two mapping tables or views, right? So in HANA, by default, it is always a referential integrity join. So what is a referential integrity join? A referential join or a referential integrity join will be a inner join in which it will only pick up the matching fields, right? It will also have certain properties of the outer join where if there is mapping between one to many or many to many, it will start picking up properties of the outer join. But as far as it is one to one, it will always be an inner join with the properties of the above joins depending upon the cardinality, meaning the relationship, whether it is one-to-one or one-to-many or many-to-one or many-to-many. Depending upon the cardinality, it will pick up the properties, and then plus it will also check the integrity between those two fields. What it means here is check integrity means, let's take an example, that there is a table T1, table T2. All right, and here we have here values like this. For the first value, it is a ID, and this is another. Let's say this is the customer ID, and then we are connecting with a customer country, for example. Okay. Similarly, here we have the ID, but here instead of ID, it indicates here the unique ID, UID, for example, here, and instead of showing country, it is showing us land 1 from SAP, for example. So what if we only do a inner join here? It fails. If only inner join. Although the values match here, for example, 1, 2, for country US, India, likewise 1, 2, US, India. Even though the values match, since the field names are different, inner joins fail all the time. So In SAP HANA, it will also check the inner joint and derive the properties based upon the cardinality, and plus do an integrity check. When it starts running the integrity check, it will start finding the values that the values are matching. Although the field technical names are not matching, in that case, this will work. So a referential integrity join or reference join is the default type of join that will always ensure the integrity check even if the field names are different. It will go down to the level of the data values and check identical data, and along with the properties derived based upon the cardinality, and run the integrity and then have a referential join. Alright, so in order to double confirm this join, let's go back to our package view, and if you observe carefully here, yesterday with our analytic view, if you can see here that, let's pick up the customer. If you see this line across the screen, we're connecting the KUNNR, KUNNR field is getting mapped to KNDNR. The field names do not match, but as far as the values are matching, it's able to pick up that relation or the reference integrity and connect these to customer IDs. Similarly, on the other hand, the other material table that we have here, MATNR, MATNR field, is getting mapped to ARTNR here. So as far as the values are matching, it could be such that the field description of the field technical names could be different, but as far as the values are matching, it will pick up those values and get the result for us. So this is by far the most accurate join in the database. That's what here in default. Similarly, for the other third example, for the third dimension, we are using a date_SAP, and that is getting connected to BUDAT. The field descriptions and field technical names are different, but the values, as far as it matches, will give us the result. So if you run data preview, it gives us the result. It does not fail in a way that the field names do not match, and therefore it's not able to give us the result set of the mapping. All right, so that is the referential join here by default. Although there are ways that if it's only a static join that you're looking for, then we go with an inner join, or you're looking for a static left outer or right outer, we go for it. And we also see here a text join for static text join. But we remember that when we start to create the material attribute view, let's go back up here into the material, open the definition, and focus into the type of the join between those two, MARA and MAKT. So what we see here is still a referential join between MARA and the MARA text table. It's able to give us the description, but it is not a text join. It is a referential join. So what it does here is trying to get the material numbers which are identical and pick up the text description. So when you run the data preview, it will give us the text of the material here in the description field for material ID, for example. Okay, so always by default in SAP HANA, data modeling for all the joins by default is a referential join. Although there are features that we can run on those unique static joins, it depends upon the scenario, but it's not always the case. Go with the default referential join and it will solve majority of design issues. Next, we will create another analytic view. Just a copy from, for example, this is how you do it. Right-click, New. We'll create another AN view. Follow the naming standard as always as a part of the project steps. ZAN underscore view underscore 02. Click here, copy from, and select our package. Subpackage, analytic view, click OK, click here, finish. So we're going to have a carbon copy of the analytic view here. And we remember that if you go back to this particular left-hand side of the screen, that if you see a object with a gray symbol attached to the icon, it implies that this object is inactive. All right? And the other object that you see here without the gray symbol indicates that this is active. Very common interview question, just for your reference. So we are here. We will go ahead with the definition once again. So what we see here is the list of the definition from the analytic view. So we have gross revenue, we had a deduction, we had a net revenue, and then we have a restricted column. And we have this particular Gregorian calendar as well, which is available from the time-based attribute view. And we have this input parameter. So yesterday we had a couple of questions around this variable input parameter area, and there's always a good practice to have the variables at the reporting layer and not at the DB. Yep. So if you want to delete it or modify it or add more, you can do so here. I will delete it from here. And we will see how we can create variables at the reporting layer. That makes a better sense for a reporting user. So go with the validation, activation, data preview, and here we are. Now yesterday, if you also remember with the show log here, we were able to see the generated SQL statement, generated SQL statement. So if we click here, we're able to see generated SQL. If you double click and expand, you will be seeing here that it's selecting top 500,000. As you see here, the setting is 500,000 for the max number of rows. So whichever value is there, it'll pick up the value and select top n number of the field values from sysbic. So sysbic is the container location. Whenever a view gets activated, it gets stored in that schema, standard container. Dot our package name, dot subpackage name, and then / our view name 02. What we did extra yesterday was to also copy this particular statement. Select copy, close, and go back to the quick launch here. If in case we want to see the SQL, we go here to the SQL console. The SQL console is the SQL editor, the SQL editor, structured query language editor. Here you can type, create, alter, drop, grant, revoke, all of those SQL commands. What we do here is just to paste the statement and run the statement. When you run the statement, it will give you the result of that statement with processing time, and then you can use that for various performance analysis. What we want to see is the visualization plan that we did yesterday. You have to right-click here on the statement, and from the context menu, select Visualize Plan. It will redirect you to another sub-screen of the Studio, which is the plan visualization screen. And if you expand it, you have here the number of rows that is picking up from the source foundation, getting aggregated, picking up top 500,000. It was able to get us 68,000 rows from the transactional table. That's how you see here. You can, of course, save this image file, or you can also print this for your auditing before you go live. In certain project implementation, if your customer is consistent to have a compliance with standards with audits before we go live, so perhaps you may want to export this or take a printout and then submit it for the auditing activities. This is what we've done yesterday. Okay. Now, let's go to our package. We had also created another analytic view, two analytic views here, 01 and 02. What we will be learning next is the way to unify if you have more than one provider. The more than one provider means more than one fact table. Remember always that an analytic view will have a single fact table. Although there's a possibility that you can bring in other transactional tables, but you have to select only one transactional table which consists of the facts, meaning the KPIs. Okay? So, a calculation view is used to unify multiple providers. It could be a table, it could be a view. So let's take an example here in the notepad. Calculation view offer unification or merging more than one provider. A provider could be the following: AT view, AN view, other CL views, meaning other calculation views, or even tables. A very common certification exam question: what are the components that we can combine together for a calculation view? Please select from the list below, for example. So in certification examination, they do ask such direct questions. A calculation view can consist or contain attribute views, analytic views, calculation views, and tables. Sometimes we tend to forget that it can also bring in tables. But remember, it can bring in tables and map tables with the views, tables with other tables. You can also map view with the views or views with the tables. You can also bring in other calculation views which are already active. So all possible combinations of unifications are provided through a calculation view. A calculation view is of two subtypes. Number one is the graphical calculation view. Number two is a script-based calculation view. A graphical calculation view is basically to drag, drop, and create graphically, just like we've developed attribute views, drag, drop, etc. And on the other hand, the script-based will require a custom coding in SQL script. So you'll have your SQL certified programmers. If the customer is looking for custom coding, you'll have SQL programmers who have been working with the SQL structured query language, PL SQL, etc. And then you can have custom calculation views for unification. But you'll find majority of all the HANA implementations, as far as the calc views are concerned, you'll have graphical calculation views being implemented. And for those customers who have already gone live, are looking further to enhance the calculation views by writing custom coding, in those cases we may find, but that's quite rare. However, these are the two subtypes. Let's learn one by one. Let's go into definition here. It indicates that a calculation view gives us the option to have our own here our own data foundation, and you can join several fact tables, and there are two subtypes, a graphical view and a script view. Okay, so let's start one by one. Let's go here to our subfolder, right-click, New Calculation View. Here, we will have to follow the naming standard, so let's go back to our project POC document and double confirm. So a calculation view should have a ZCL underscore view underscore name of the calculation view. So this is a POC outline. We will follow that naming standard. So go back here. It's a ZCL underscore view underscore the name. However, you can also include your own naming standard. For example, type here is graphical that we want to first create, and name is unification. Okay. UN unification, for example, or right, we can give the name or number 01 or whichever case. In the description, we give here a calculation view of a graphical type for union-based join or for unification. The subtype here, select the graphical first, and then there are further ways to categorize the calculation view graphical type here as a cube or as a dimension. Now, what it implies over here is that if you want to have this calculation view that you created just now to be available for the reporting, in those cases we will identify as a cube type. I repeat, if you intend to have your calculation view available for reporting purpose, then we categorize here calculation view as a cube data category type. If not, meaning if you want to have a calculation view that should be part of another calculation views as a dimension, in those cases we select here as a dimension. I will repeat once more. If there is a need for your calculation view to be used at the reporting layer, then we select here cube. If you want your calculation view not at the reporting but at another calculation view because we're going to run some intermediate design and not yet ready for reporting, you want to use a calculation view in another calculation view as a participating provider as a dimension, so you select here dimension. A very, very, very common certification question and interview question here. So first up, we want to have a cube type. And when you select a cube type, it's asking us whether you want to select this checkbox with the star join or not. A star join is only used for performance optimization if we have higher number of values or records coming in at the reporting layer. So in order to have a better performance, you select this checkbox. Otherwise, you can leave it blank. So click here and finish. And then we see here the semantics. Let's have a look here into the right-hand part of the screen. In this definition screen, we have a join option here. This is used for intersection joins. The next icon here is we have a union. It's used for the union-based or the kind of an outer join. Whenever you unify tables with other tables or views with other views or tables with the views, you may want to have a union join or an intersection join. The next one here, going clockwise, is aggregation. Aggregation is a by default sub-calculation layer where it will roll up those KPIs and aggregate and summarize and give us the result, especially when you want this calculation view at the reporting layer. The next option here is it says projection it is. A projection is a subset of the underlying provider. What it means is that when you bring in a table or a view, it could be possible that we may have 100 fields, but we don't require all the 100 fields. We require only 15 fields. Yep. So in those cases, we use subset projected fields to be used for union or intersection. Right? That's the definition. In interviews, they do ask the definitions. In certification exams, they do ask direct definitions. So that's for the definition. Let's start with the practice. Now, here in the grid, in this area of the scenario, we have a semantics when we have aggregation. What we're going to perform is to able to bring in a join between two providers. A provider could be a table, a provider could be a calculation view, or else it could be a attribute view or a table or an attribute view. Now, why do we need to combine? What is the business example for a calculation view, right? So in order to understand before we start actually developing the object, let's go back here to the basic document where we will understand a simple example. Let's say there's a business scenario where we have a purchase department with all the purchase data, which basically comprises of purchasing raw materials. So you'll have materials that we purchase. From whom? From suppliers, yeah, and or vendors, or group of vendors, or federation of vendors, possible. Yep, these are the guys that are gonna offer us, supply us the raw materials. So we purchase quantity of the materials, and then we have other details of the purchase department. This is a purchase data model or a purchase transactional table, for example. Now there is another business scenario for financials data, and it consists of all the payable details. Okay, financials could be payable, receivable, other overdraft and the carry forward, overlapping financial values. So it could be various subcategories. But we're looking at one of the subcategory where we have the payables. But payables to whom? Payables to our suppliers. Because we're buying from these vendors and suppliers, we got to pay to purchase, right? So we have a payables accounts payable financial data set or data model or table. Payables to vendors, which is mapped to our GL account, general ledger accounts, because in finance it's all account numbers. Yeah, it's account number for the vendor IDs, suppliers. What are the materials that are payable from these vendors? How many quantity? So we have some of these details. What if there is a scenario that we got to merge these two together, plus these two together? We got to merge these two, whereby we wanted to have a combined data set to find out those vendors that we are payable for these raw material types. Find out those payables for the week of purchasing these many quantity for these material types, right? Or get me the list of all the vendors that we are payable or that we are yet to pay next week, so that we can allow the budget rolling to give us the payment, for example. So there could be multiple transactions. So this is one of the examples. So we unify these two with the help of a calculation view, and then get us the combined outer or the union between these two. It could be intersection join depending upon the requirement. Yep, this is one business example. Let's go with the other business example. Another business scenario could be that we have a sales in which we are selling to customers certain products that we are selling through certain channels of sales. Could be on the website sales or customer support through phone sales, or maybe direct store sales, right? You got multiple channels, how many that we are selling, number of quantity, right? And then you have another data model for the financials where it is giving us all the receivables, okay, receivables for the cash inflow, inbound cash, receivables. When you sell, we receive the value. So from whom? From customer groups. For what? For the products that we sold. From where? From the channel. And how many? Quantity. And what's the receivable value? So if there is a requirement that, hey, give us those receivables, we are doing a financial consolidation to analyze our revenues or cash flows. So give us top 5 customers who's giving us the highest receivable. Or give us those customers that we did not receive anything from, or maybe that means we did not do business with that customer. Yeah. So it could be multiple supply chain or sales related with the financial requirement to combine those data sets or data models or views together. This is another scenario. Yep. So that's when we need to combine and unify, and that is offered here with the calculation view. So let's take the example here with the baseline views that we have created in our package. We got these two analytic views. We're going to bring in together and map it. But before we do so, there is a best practice for a trained HANA consultant or for a certified HANA consultant that whenever you start creating calculation view, you have to use projections as a best practice. Now, what is a projection or projections? A projection is a subset of data. A subset of data means that may be possible that in one of the table or transactional table or our analytic view, we may have 150 fields, but we don't require all of those, but we require only a subset of that 150 fields. Maybe 5 fields from one and another 5 fields from another provider. And then we join those together. So a projection helps in a better optimized data modeling. It's possible that without the projections, you can just directly map it, connect it, and deploy it. No problem. Absolutely fine. But as far as the best practice goes, go with the projections. Let's see how we use it here in our design. So you have projection in here. So you got to click and drop it into this work area. So you have projection _1. For every provider, there should be a projection. If there are 5 tables to be merged, you're going to have 5 projections. In our example, we want to use 2 providers, so you're going to have 2 projections. You can align it likewise. Once you align, what we do next is to bring in those tables or the views directly that you drag and drop into the drop elements here, box and the projections. Then you select the subset of the fields. Okay, so which is required at the reporting, which is required to join, which is required for the analysis at the presentation layer. So you select the subsets, and then we're going to bring these two together here with a union or a intersection join here, and then map it further with the aggregation, where it can perform subtotaling, roll-up aggregation, summarizing the KPI values and quantity together and making it available for reporting. So we'll see how we do it. So we have got these 2 baseline views. We're going to put it in here, drag and drop. This is a graphical calculation view, so it's all drag and drop. To bring in the other one as well here. Yeah. So projection _1, we have these many fields coming in from the provider, first provider. Not necessary that all the fields are required for the reporting. Only those which is required has to be selected. Say, for example, we require customer number and country key. We need the material number, for example, from here. And then type in the group, and then we have certain gross revenue and deductions from here. So we're only picking up these, and let's pick up one of the time. Let's say we want to go with a quarter, month, and then year. This is from the first provider. Only these fields that are required from the first provider. From the second provider, projection _2 is a subset. We'll bring in customer, country. We will also bring in customer account group. We'll bring in the material number, type, and then the group and the material status. We're adding more fields here. We will go down to the level of the day, which is a date. Then we will also get into cal week, cal month, cal quarter, and then also bring up the old material number. Let's also bring in the date in which it was created. Let's go back to the customer and get a first name of the customer, and of course those KPIs. So we're going to have gross revenue, deduction, net revenue. These are the 3 KPIs. So we have a higher projected subset of the fields from projection 2. Next, bring in a union from here and drop it here. And then we're going to connect these 2 into the union. So put the mouse pointer here and you'll be able to see a small arrow popping out to the right hand side. Create a connection. Click, drag, drop into Union 1. Next, projection 2, arrow, click, drag, drop into Union 1 from projection 2. This is what we have here so far with the union. Now, as far as the mapping is concerned, when I click here on the Union 1, you'll be able to see the Provider 1, Provider 2, meaning Projection 1, Projection 2. For certain developments, we may have to perform manual mappings. For example, there's customer number, right-click, add to target. Next, customer number, right-click, is already added to the target, select Map to Target. Select the target column, customer number, create. It is a manual mapping. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it could take a lot of effort to map manual fields. Instead of doing a manual mapping, delete this, we click here on the special icon which looks like a share icon if you're using mobile phones. So there, if you click here, it will automatically run the mapping between those two provider projections. Okay, and once the mapping is performed, we will put the union result into the aggregation and drop it here. And click here on aggregation, finally pick up the fields for attributes and measures. When you do so, there are two conditions. One is whether we want to show as an aggregated column or not. For all the attribute fields, it has to be selected as a output, a normal output. And for all the KPI fields, it has to be selected as a calculated aggregated field. Let's see the difference between those two. For example, we're going to right-click here, land 1, and it shows us in the context menu, do you want to add this field as an aggregated column or just as an output? Now the difference between these two is that an aggregated column will perform a roll-up and summarization is applicable for KPI fields or numeric fields, although you can apply that to text fields or ID fields like customer ID, customer name, country ID, country descriptions. As a best practice, we select the attributes as an output. And we select the KPI numeric fields like here gross revenue as an aggregated column. This is the best practice. Why best practice to differentiate when you try and select? Is because of the fact that the KPI values will have the numeric information which can be aggregated, total, subtotal, subtracted, summarized. Therefore, it gives us the option to show us the aggregated column or aggregated values. On the other hand, for the attribute fields like land 1 or material number, it does not make sense to add up all the material numbers. It's good to only show the material number as number of that material, but not to sum up all material numbers. Similarly, material type, material groups, it does not make sense to aggregate those types and groups because they are alphabet or text information. So we just directly show as a output. But in the case of the KPIs, since they've got values, numeric values, which can be rolled up, aggregated, therefore it is advisable to use these numeric field KPIs and show it as an aggregated field values. Okay, let's pick up the net revenue here. Right-click, add as an aggregated. And for the rest of the others, we just select add to output, for example, like this. We also have a further option to selectively identify the fields that are available for reporting, that if you want to hide, those things are also in here. So if you select, it will be available for output. If you not select, it will not be available for output for the reporting tools. Then we go up here to the semantics, and we remember the semantics will always give us a technical definition of that object. In this example, the object is a calculation view. Here we have so many fields. Now, when you start creating attribute views and analytic views for the first time, we just have 1 or 2 fields that are local, and then all of the remaining are shared from the attribute views. So ideally, we have to go in here, select the type as an attribute or a measure. Yeah. So this is what we got to do. But every time, if you have higher number of fields, it takes a effort to actually define as an attribute or as a measure. So what we do here is to auto-assign the type by clicking here on the last icon in this box. So you're going to click here once. It will automatically assign the field as an attribute or as a measure. Done. Next, if you also want to assign a sequence, for example, you want to show with the land one first, or you want to bring the gross revenue and these other fields at the last, you can move up, move down. Okay. Let's go with a validation. Let's look at the job log of the validation. If you're looking at the diagnosis part, yep, so model validation. Double click, and you'll be able to see the validation results here. If there are any errors, you can select show errors only checkbox, and will show you errors, but no errors found. But there is a warning here. Warning, which is indicated with this yellow exclamation mark expanded. What does it say? It says that a variable unmapped input parameter found. Well, we can ignore warning as such because we did not map the variables from one of the provider. So this will help us to diagnose if you want to troubleshoot any validation or activation. Similarly, for the other object, we go in here, validation, activation rules. So for every validation and activation, in the job details, there are 2 layers. One is at the client side, and the other is at the server side. Okay. So that's for consultants who are also looking for troubleshooting parts. Yep. Okay, let's go with data preview. We have the mapping available with the calculation view, the union based. Okay, so now what we're going to perform is to replace the union and work with an intersection. The difference between a union and the intersection is that a union will only give us the complete mapping, and the intersection is only going to give us the matching fields. So we're going to create another graphical calculation view. Let's go in here. Let's go to ZCL as a naming for the next calculation view. Type is graphical, and intersection 01, for example. Subtype still graphical. Click here on Finish. We can perform the similar steps of bringing in, or what I'm going to do is save the definition. We can also create a copy from the union and replace the union with an intersection. Okay, that's also possible. I'm creating another one here, ZCL view underscore intersection 02, and then what we do here is to copy from. If you're willing to create a new one, you can select further and finish, or if you are already having a view that you just want to modify one of the components, click copy from your package, subpackage, calculation view here, click OK, click Help Finish. So it will get us the complete copy structure, so we don't have to spend time to identify a projection, subset, etc. What we do here is to replace the union with the intersection join. So you're going to delete the union here, union 1, click, hit on delete, confirm yes, and delete the union. And instead of the union, we're going to bring here the join, click, and click here in the center. You can also align. So the join is an intersection join, which will only give us the matching fields. So let's see how it is built. Drag and drop. And here, once you click on the join, you'll be able to see those two provider projections, projection 1, projection 2. But there is no automatic mapping of the fields. Because it is an intersection based, we have to drag and drop and perform the mapping manually. So customer number to customer number, likewise. Material number to material number. Group to group. Type to the type. And we will not be able to map all the rest of the other cal quarter or cal week, etc. Because it is an intersection. Now here for HANA, the intersection is slightly evolved in a way that although we can only map matching fields, we can also select the field which is not present in the other provider. What it means is that if there's a need to bring in the gross revenue from projection 2, we have an option to select from here. And let's also bring in the date in which the material was created. Right-click, add to output. Although these fields don't exist on the other projection. The previous material number, BISMT, add to output. Yeah. And date, for example. Or let's go with the customer account group number, KTOKT, add to output. Although the fields do not exist on the other projection, we have an evolved version of the intersection join that can selectively bring in from one projection field, and then we can also bring from the other. For example, gross revenue from here and quarter and month from the other projection, like this. And of course, we also want to bring in the year, for example. It's possible to cross-select selectively or kind of cherry-pick the fields with an intersection. And then finally, we connect it from here into aggregation. And then from the aggregation, remember the thumb rule, attribute fields as an output. And the numeric fields, or the KPI fields, as an aggregated. Okay. Then we go here to semantics. Auto assign the type as an attribute and a measure. Validate. Activate. And then data preview. All right. So, guys, can you give me 10 seconds? I need to just go and come back. 10 seconds. Okay, so this is with the intersection join that we were able to bring in those two providers. I would request all to practice after the session. If you have other tables or if you have your own data set or views, please practice with this baseline example with the union intersection graphical type. The next subtype of the calculation view is the SQL script-based. The script-based is where we use structured query language scripting and create the calculation view. Now, majority of the implementations do not go with the SQL scripting due to the following restrictions. Let's write down those. Or here, script-based calc view has some limitation. One is always SQL or PL SQL. SQL and PL SQL are flat programming, meaning it does not support OOPS concept. Does not support object-oriented programming like what we have in ABAP, what's there in other programming languages, application programming language. Because it is a database programming language, it is a flat programming with tables, views, and not support OOPS concept. So if there are complex requirements to run complex calculations or complex custom coding, the solution is to use BODS ABAP, BODS ABAP combined with SQL, BODS ABAP combined with SQL combined with the custom functions, and so forth, where you can have your own custom coding or control logic. So you can bring the data from HANA, compile and compute in BODS, send it back to HANA, update the tables. So this is the most preferred solution today in a lot of installation base. In earlier case in 2012, there were a lot of SQL programming, and then customers later identified that SQL programming, although is a feature, but it comes with a lot of restriction that a developer just create a select statement or nested SQL statements and go into a loop and never come out. Hence, performance that was promised by HANA was not delivered due to less optimized programming, due to not support of the OOPS concept. So later, SAP developed the BODS 4.1 to 4.2, upgraded the BODS to 4.2 version with a better support for control logic for HANA conditional custom coding. So if there are complex requirements, try to ensure to work with the BODS developer with such custom coding, although there's a feature here. Okay. Next is the SQL programming. SQL script-based calc views are generally implemented by those customers who have already gone live, and they're looking for more customizations. Some customers are able to do it, but they come back with certain feedback that although customization is possible, it could be they're slightly worried about the quality of the SQL program. If a SQL programmer is experienced, you have a better optimized program coding. If not, there are certain expensive SQL statements, expensive to the performance of the view and the report. So there are some limitations based. However, we will still learn what based look like. All right. So we're going to create a calculation view, new, follow the naming standard, ZCL underscore view underscore SQL, yeah, because it's script based, 001. Select the subtype here as script based. So when you select the script based, the cube, those other settings are removed. What we see here is whether your SQL scripting require to have a case sensitive or not parameters. Because the SQL script will be passing values from other function module or get custom functions right here in the coding, or call or read or define or execute certain functions which may require parameters between functions and within the program construct. So by default it is true as a default setting for the case sensitive parameters, and then for the next one here is false, which is for not case sensitive. Alright, so either way, please work together with your SQL certified programmers, SQL experienced programmers if the SQL script based views have to be created. We'll see the construct of the program, how it will look like. Okay. Once you click here on Finish, you have a similar semantic screen that we're all familiar with. And then we have a script underscore view, which is where the line of the code has to be written. All the lines of the codes have to be written between begin and end block. Anything beyond the begin and the end block will result into a compilation error, if not a comment. A SQL programmer, a SQL experienced developer will have the idea of writing a construct. Let's see how a program construct looks like. First, any programming structure will have a declaration portion. So I'm going to put a comment here. Comment for single line. Is shown by a double hyphen at the beginning of the text. Comment for multiple lines is given here with a /* and close with */. If I remove this / and star, the whole of this line is not a comment. Okay. And if you put here / and star, the complete line becomes a comment, and anything that you write in between these two blocks are always a comment. Okay, that's a multiple line comment. So every program starts with a declaration, declaring the variables with the type or the length, right? So for example, var1 is for varchar, data type and length is 12, end of statement. That's a declaration of a variable. What we also see here at the right-hand side of the screen, there is an output panel. So depending upon the requirement, the SQL programmer will either decide to create the parameters here or to create the parameters dynamic in the coding. Okay. Certain SQL programmers will be already able to visualize which parameters are required, so they create it here before they write the coding. Certain programmers which are not so experienced, they type the dynamic declaration here because we don't know how many variables will be required. So depending upon the use case, scenarios, developer skill set, parameters could be developed, created either as an input parameter, pre-declaration, or dynamic declaration in the code. Okay. Next. Every declaration follows with a initialization. The initialization will consist of the previously declared variable. So var1 equals the variable varchar, for example, name. End of statement. Okay. So to start, as a HANA consultant, you have to work together with a SQL programmer if there are custom coding that are required. But the advisable solution, as we've seen earlier, is to go with the bots. A experienced or a SQL programmer which is certified with multiple experiences will combine these two together into one line of statement. So, declaration with the initialization combined together. So I'm going to move this and declaration plus initialization. How it's done, let's see at the coding construct. Var1, variable 1 equals select star from a table. This is a generic structure query language. What it's trying to give us is to have the result of the select statement from this table available here in this variable. Remember, all variables in the database are array variables. You can store more than one values. So we are declaring the variable 1 and also initializing the variable var1 with the values select star from a field from a table. So if there are 100 fields, all the 100 field values will be available here in variable 1, as the database variables are array variables, not single value variables. From a HANA standpoint, when reading from a table, we got to always read from the schema dot the table name. Maybe select column 1, column 2, column 3 as I'm typing the syntax, column 4 and column 5 from schema dot table. This is how we read from a table from the HANA schema, and select and available for that variable 1. Similarly, let's go with the variable 2. Select column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4 from a view, for example, if you want to read from a view, because a calculation view can combine tables with the views together. Yeah? So we want to read, want to check the syntax how if we want to read from a view. So we're going to read it from underscore sys underscore bic dot the package name dot the subpackage name / the view name, end of statement with the semicolon. We've seen this particular select statement earlier today with the show log, and even yesterday with the show log from a data preview. With the generated select the SQL statement, it was picking up the values from sysbic.thepackage.subpackage / the view name. So far, we have got these two variables, var1 and var2, with a declaration and initialization done together with a single line for both these two variables. So as you start working with a SQL programmer, they will also use some other predicates with their experience, with their programming. Just like in SAP implementation, there are other SAP ABAP certified developers. Likewise, in HANA, you'll have your programmer counterpart, or even ABAPers who are working with SQL coding can type their coding here. Now, what does the best practice indicate for a calculation view? The best practice indicates that we got to use a projection. What is a projection? A projection is a subset projected, meaning selected fields that are required for the reporting and the various mapping, not all the fields. So therefore, that's the best practice for a better optimized and a leaner design of your calc view. So we're going to use a projection variable here, projection1. I'm typing the syntax, equals select column 1, column 3, column 5. We're selecting subset from where? From variable 1. So what we're doing here is the variable 1 is already consisting the select result of column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from a table from HANA. That is again picked up here as a from for select only column 1, 3, and 5 as a projection. That's how a program line looks like, although we could already easily design a projection in a graphical calculation view, but if you have to write it in a SQL script, this is how it's going to look like. Now your counterpart SQL programmer will be using certain predicates, which are special characters that indicate to the compiler that, hey, this is a variable that you want to reuse. So in order to identify to the SQL compiler, the programmers use a special character, which is at the rate symbol, at the prefix, and at the postfix. So it's trying to read from a variable which is already declared and it's got content in there. And when you try to reuse that, the predicates will give the indicator to the compiler that this is a reusable variable. So at the rate has a prefix and postfix. So it's trying to read only selective fields here, the subset projected, column 1, 3, and 5 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Similarly, for projection 2, for the next view, equals select column 1, column 2, and column 4. Let's put here column 3 and 4. From where? From variable 2. Now, new advanced SQL programmer also use another predicate indicator, which is just to put a colon at the prefix of that variable. Either way, we're using a at the rate symbol prefix postfix or just a colon as a prefix. Both will work the same to reuse a variable. So if you have a programming team, make sure that your programmer, SQL programmer, is experienced or SQL certified, and they will be able to optimize and not have expensive SQL statements, expensive to the performance of the view. So this is an optimized syntax of coding. Once the projections are available, what we see here is a default output parameter, which is var_out, written in the lowercase. Remember that whenever you see any lowercase in HANA, there could be two possibilities. One is standard object, or another could be an untrained consultant creating an object in the lowercase. Yep. So we see here var_out, which is a default output parameter, which will give us the result of the union between these two projections. There are two possibilities of performing the logic. One is to create a logic right here, or another could be called a function which got a logic elsewhere in another procedure of functions. If you want to create a logic right here by creating a function or a procedure, you send the command create function name, or create the procedure name, and with the parameters P1, P2, for example, Pn parameters. So you create a function right here. Oops, not with this, with the, yeah, you create a function right here. Or the logic, or the nested select statement, or the nested loop, or the nested function call here, according to the custom logic required by the team, by the reporting team, or by the users. or we just directly call a procedure which is already created. So call function or call a procedure, either way. The name of the function or the name of the procedure by passing the parameters. P1, I'm always in the double quotes, P1, parameter 2, parameter n. Right? There are some standard programs that are available in a SQL environment. One of them is the union_all, which is used, but the restriction is only 2 parameters are accepted. So if you want to do a union between 5 providers, it's not possible to use the standard union. That's also the case with the graphical calculation view. Union only takes 2 parameters. So if you want to do 5, a combination of 5 providers, we first do a union with the first 2, and then the next 2, and the result with the first. So let's have a look here in the graphics. Let's write down union in the calculation view, whether it is a graphical or a SQL script, only takes 2 parameters. Union with 2 tables, for example. But if there are more than 2 providers or 2 projections, yep, the parameters that we have here are providers. So if there are more than 2 providers, example, if 5 analytic views need to be combined with, or let's only take these 5. So if 5 attribute views need to be combined, then what we're going to perform is something like this. You have first analytic view, projection, second, third, fourth, fifth projection analytic views. We're going to merge these 2 and have a union. Going to merge these 2 and have a union. Going to merge these 2, have a union, and then we're going to bring that here, or else we can, sorry, I just need to remove this, or else we can get the reunion from here into here union, and then these 2 union goes up here. Since it only takes 2 providers or 2 projections, it could be sometimes that you can have a nested something like this with 5 providers or 5 tables or 5 analytic views or 5 analytic views that need to be combined with another calculation view. Those cases it's possible to have this graphical layout. But in the programming, if you need to achieve that similar activity of the unification, you have to create your own custom functions. Or you can also have a similar logic that you get the result of the first 2 union, store in one variable, get that, and then pick up the other union and combine those 2 together, and then finally the third set of the providers. Either way possible. But if there is a need to create your own function, create function or call function from here. Let's take an example that there is a temp variable that we create. Temp variable equals call function of a union, and then variable var_out equals colon temp. End of statement. So the variable out will give us the union between those 2 projections. So what we see here is some limitation in the coding because it does not support the OOPS concept. What we also see here in this coding is that it becomes static flat programming. Although these activities can already be easily achieved in a graphical calculation view with some workarounds. Today, a lot of HANA customers are moving out of flat SQL programming into the BODS object-oriented programming because of higher complexity, because of a higher number of providers, because of the flexibility of running ABAP coding and not just SQL. Although ABAP codes read with a SQL statement, but there are conditional loops, there are nested loops, there are other OOPS concept that has to be executed and stored with temporary tables and function module call and a lot of other areas that is achieved in the BODS through ABAP data flow. All right. Now, if we're also interested in SQL programming, you want to find out more documents about it, you can go here into the help documentation, which will open an embedded web browser for the help.sap.com/HANA. You can see that here in the web browser, or you can open an independent web page. For example, let's go out of here. Let's go to my screen. Yeah, so I'm going into help.sap.com/HANA. Scrolling down here in the HANA platform. And for the HANA platform, we get to see a lot of details here. But what we are interested in is to go to the SQL part. You can also have a look with the release notes. If you're a basis administrator, the installation upgrade guides, standard installation steps, security guide, technical operations manual, administrator guide, troubleshooting performance analysis guide, data modeling guide, development guide, quick start developer guide. These are all in here. And if you look into the reference information means that we refer, but it's not actually the primary development activity that we do in HANA. So it's an extra additional reference where we get to see the SQL that describes the information about what are the data types in SQL, varchar, integer, decimal, predicates, the one that we used with the @ symbol, and the colon symbol, operators, plus, minus, equal, not equal, expressions, function statements. These are here for additional reference on SQL scripting. Okay. Next, let's go back to our POC document with the deliverables. So far, we were able to get our attribute views with the subtypes. Remember the subtypes? Standard, derived, time-based. Analytic views, only just one type. And calculation views with two subtypes, graphical and SQL script-based. The minimum requirements are as follows. An attribute view requires a minimum of a master data table and at least one key attribute field. On the other hand, for an analytic view, we require at least one data foundation. Of course, analytic view can bring in other attribute views as I mentioned, but the minimum requirement is to have at least one transactional table that's got the KPIs. In a calculation view, we require at least one projection as a part of the best practice. And the technical minimum requirement is to have at least one provider, table or a view. The next deliverable is to go into the SNA, security authorizations. And before we do so, I'll pick up questions from the chat box. I will copy and paste it. Okay, so I have this one here. To ensure understanding in case I need very complex, I should handle it during data provisioning, BODS, SLT. Yes, and then plus after data load. What if the data is already loaded? We understand that before the data is loaded, we can perform with the bots and SLT certain transformation rules and filtering conditions, splitting, concatenation. Those business rules can be applied. But what if data is already loaded and you want to have further complex calculation? We still use bots. So bots will pick up from HANA, run the custom coding or control logic in the BODS, and the result is sent back to HANA. So from HANA to BODS, back to HANA, update table, conditional flow, selective delete, selective updates, selective writing back into the HANA DB based upon conditions, and flexible data flows or control logic defined in the bots. So your understanding is correct, but if you have data already loaded, then we still use bots. Although SQL programming is used, but it becomes sometimes due to not so good design or not so optimized the SQL line of code, or maybe the developer is not experienced SQL, therefore it's not recommended. Even our customers will ask if you're a HANA consultant with the SQL experience or not. If not, then they will have their own SQL programmer. So the opportunities in terms of a developer is extensive, whether we develop as with the programming, or develop with the bots, or develop with design data models. Okay. And then I have I have earlier points that I'm going back. Yeah. Earlier question point is here. So irrespective of the restrictions of the number of rows, does the SQL pick all entries from database and then filter the top entries? Depends upon the SQL condition. If the SQL condition is that you only pick up the top entries, in this case, but if you're referring to the generated SQL statement, yeah, answer is, if you're looking at the generated SQL statement from the show log, it will only pick up the top entries or the top n number of rows, whichever is defined at max rows for data review. Later you can put the SQL script, copy and paste the SQL console, and instead of top n, you can put top n plus n. If you're writing your conditions, you can also filter just top 5 and then have another select statement with top 3. Next question, are we going to cover check 1 2 3 check. I think I lost the audio. If I'm back, yeah. Okay. So right, so we can see the screen. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So the overview of the scripting is just what we require. A HANA consultant need not be a SQL programmer, but if you are interested with the SQL programming side, you can extend beyond the development to also perform programming at the database. Yep. So it's not required to be a SQL programmer, because if you're a SQL programmer, you'll be working with only SQL scripting and that's it. But if you're a HANA consultant, you have some SQL awareness, maybe not, but try and focus on the application consulting side, because HANA today is a lot extensive. A consultant with a bot's experience will be given the bot's job of extraction, although the consultant knows HANA. On the other side, a consultant with a reporting experience will be primarily enhancing and leveraging their reporting skill set on top of HANA. But what is missing in between is the HANA application consultant, which is important bridge between developers, other core team members, other functional users, and the reporting consultants. Yeah. Next question. Can we convert the calculation view from a cube to dimension later or in enhancement? Answer is not possible. Once you have a cube type based calculation view, it will only be a cube type. And once if you define it as a dimension type to be used as another calculation view, it will continue to be a dimension type. So if you need to convert, you have to copy and or create a new calculation view by putting in the data category assignment. So for now, it's not possible. Good question. Is it required for HANA consultants to know PL SQL scripting? Just an overview. That's it. Not the complex or the further level of programming. Just an overview, because extensive programming custom logics are done in BODS in ABAP data flow, or else in other custom data flow in BODS. Yep. Okay. Now, let's go back to the POC project documents and go into the second level of the deliverable, which is the SNA, Security Authorization. What it means here is that for your project as a HANA application consultant, you also will be working with users that will be allowed to view your views at the reporting layer.
Sorry, can I ask you just a quick question before you move on?
Yep.
You know, one thing I noticed what you did when you did the calculation view, you basically pretty much copied existing analytical view and then combined those two. So that was, and when you try to do the projection, I noticed one analytical view had more fields initially than the other one, even though you just made a copy, you know.
Yep, yep. That was to demonstrate that you can have additional higher number of fields from other provider and lower number of fields from the other provider.
After you copied, you did add it as additional field in the other one? That's what I'm just curious.
No, it's not. It's the selection that we did. So let's go back here. Just hold on. I need to reconnect. So from one projection, I selected only 4 fields, round about that. And from the other projection, I selected 7 fields or 8 fields. So that will give you as a hint that if there's a need to pick up a higher number of fields from other provider, we can do so. And then combine it into the union. Yeah. So from here, this is where we did the mapping from those 2 providers, provider 1, provider 2, meaning projection 1, projection 2. And in projection 2, we have a higher number of fields. This is because we selected a projection. What is a projection? Selective fields, subset of the fields. So from projection number 2, we picked up higher number of fields, hence we see those fields coming in here. For example, the older material number, the customer account group that we additionally added. So this is just to give us a hint that if there is a need to select larger number of fields that needs to be mapped with the other projection with less number of fields, it's possible with a calculation view here.
Okay. So in other words, this calculation view is a good example if you want to do like a plans versus actual for like a planning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep. Plan versus actuals, or within the actuals, you can do other higher number of intermediate KPI calculations, selecting a data set from one view with the other, and then combining with the third. So those are the other combinations that are possible based upon the scenarios.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let's go back to the quick launch, and for the next deliverable from the POC document was to have a security authorization object. So if you go back to the quick launch, the next item here is the analytic privilege, and this is the authorization object that controls an end user to view or to connect into our package, to connect into our attribute analytic calculation views. So if there is an end user, USR1 is an end user, and this end user wants to connect to our views, yeah, and run a query or run a report at the reporting layer, the user 1 will be checked in the background if the user 1 is authorized to connect to our views. And that authorization object is checked here for all the views. That's done through analytical privileges. So we go with the default information given here that an analytic privilege is used to restrict read access from analytic attribute and calculation views with the condition of the attribute values. For example, department number 555 user wants to see our report, but our report is having department number 555, 666, and 777. So we only want to restrict a user to only particularly specifically look at department 555. So we put a filter on that department ID attribute equals 555 and allow the user to have a read operation from that view. So any view that we develop as an application consultant remains incomplete until and unless we add the tag of the security or authorized objects. So remember that another important critical success factor of your development is the security objects. All the objects, views, and packages that you develop has to be given to the right user, to the right authorization metrics. Application consultant will work together very closely with security consultants. Now this opens up the another portfolio for for basis administrators and security consultants who work closely with the developments. On the other side, application consultants developing the package and views are also advised to have a understanding and a working knowledge of how to assign, grant, revoke, or create concatenated privileges. This is how we start to assign. So we see how we create. In order to create, let's go to our package. So package, right-click, new object, and select analytic privilege. Click here. Follow the naming standard. Let's go back to our POC document. What would be the naming standard? Let's confirm. The next object here is analysis authorization object should have this particular naming standard. I'm going to highlight that. See here, ZAP underscore SCM underscore the name of that object. All right, so we're going to use that naming standard. Go back here, ZAP underscore SCM underscore the name of the object. Let's take an example for country code, US. So we want to allow a user from the U.S. To check only the U.S. Or only those reporting consultants or report writers or reporting end users from the U.S. to check that view. And if it is not the other, if it is other country, they're not allowed. So some kind of restriction based on the metrics. Click Next for our package with the view in it. So let's select the view. Let's take an example for analytic view. Add here. So whenever the user wants to create a report or create a query from this selected view, the user will be checked in the background based upon the condition that will be specified here. Based upon the filter condition, if the user is from a department ID or company code, controlling area, profit center, cost center, or distribution channel number, or even a country code. So we're going to pick up an example with a country code equals US. So when you click on Finish, we get to see the technical name of the object, of the analytic privilege, which is non-changeable. Please also make a note. All the technical names of the HANA object cannot be changed later after it is created and activated. Only the descriptions can be changed later, but not the technical IDs. Okay, that's a note. So back here, you have a technical ID, you have got a description. You also see there's a checkbox. It indicates applicable to all information models, meaning all views. In some cases, we may require a super authorization, custom analytical authorization, which need to be applicable to all the models, to all the views, maybe for test and development purpose, maybe for a super user requirements. In those cases, we select this checkbox. Now what happens when you select this checkbox is our analytic privilege becomes applicable to all the package and not just the one that's mentioned here. It will be applicable to all of these packages, all of the views, whichever is active and whichever gets created tomorrow or in the near future, will pick up and will also assign the authorization there in that view as well. So applicable to all views or all information models. This is only in the special case for power user, developer, or master developer, or process owners likewise. So in ideal real-time, or sorry, real-world project, we specifically assign the view by adding here once the view is validated, activated, and it is signed off with the blueprint that these views are available as a design cutover and is going for a reporting cutover. Only those views need to be added here. So in order to add, you click here, select your package, select the view, click OK, then you add it. In our example, we're just picking one. We can also add another one from another package. Let's pick up one of yours. So pick up from here. So you're adding two views in here, one from one package, another from another package. It's possible to add and remove as and when needed based upon the authorization matrix. Now, the authorization matrix is another primary reference document for all security consultants who are enhancing authorization security objects to various group of users, developers, programmers, administrators, or report writers. Important document. Like a blueprint, you should have an authorization matrix. Follow the authorization matrix, add, remove, based upon the requirements. What we see here to the right-hand side is the expiry date of that AP, or the analytic privilege. If there is a need to assign a validity that it should be valid from this to this date, you can assign it from to. For example, add from between, or date equals today's date or the date in the system. So if there's an audit at the reporting project for HANA, and the audit user at the reporting layer is performing audit for a day, and you don't want that audit user to also have access on the next day, because on the next day you're going for transports, or maybe you are going for other cutovers. So you only want for that single day. You can assign it here validity or not. The next detail here is asking us to select the attribute field where you want to assign the analytic privilege. In our case, we want to pick up the country code and assign it only to the US. Let's pick up the country. And then is asking here below, select or assign the restriction for Z customer underscore land 1. Which country do you want to restrict? Do you want to apply restriction add country operator equal to US? Find, select, OK. So when the user, with the user condition given with the US, try and log on to these two views, it works. But if a user from Argentina try and create a query on these two views, it will show up, pop up on the reporting tool, no authorization, contact system administrator. That's how you control user access to our views that we develop on the back end. Now, we're going to save and validate. Activate. Of course, there is no data preview here because it's a security object. Once you activate, you'll be able to see in your package subfolder that you have the object created. If you go here to the cross tab here, users/roles, you'll be able to see where this AP has been assigned. If you need to assign to certain 5 developers who is also creating the report for test and development purposes, or to certain power user roles, you can do the assignment at the security folder, come back here, and then you'll be able to see and not change, see what's who are the users and roles that have got this privilege. Okay, so you're going to close it. All assignments with security objects, all security objects development, assignment, revoke, delete, etc. is conducted in a separate folder, which is here, security folder. Expand. You'll have users and roles. Let's take an example of the users. Let's have here tech user Tony. Open the definition by double-clicking on user. So this is a existing random user that I just picked up. We'll also see how we create our own user IDs. So once you have your user ID, open the definition, and then you have multiple tabs below. What are the granted roles? What are the system privileges for system administrative tasks? What are the object privileges for working with the database object with the HANA schema, tables, etc.? And here is what we see here, analytic privileges. This is for a user having access to the view at the reporting layer. Analytic privilege only gets triggered at the query time and not in the design time. Hence, a developer do not require an AP. A reporting user requires an AP. Likewise, other privileges assigned. Tomorrow when we come back, we will learn further on this assignment of these multiple privileges. So I was referring to the authorization matrix time and again, which is here in this spreadsheet, in the next worksheet. And you see here, it's a small template. This is for security consultants and consultants working with the implementation project where you may need to work and design a template for your authorization project for HANA. So we'll put here a user. It could be developer, end user, etc. A developer type of the user, internal, external user. We will learn about these in our next session tomorrow. And then we have roles for a developer: development role, test, and transport. All those 5 privileges count 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's another one called as application privilege, which I've not mentioned because it's not used, but only when you have an application on HANA. Ideal cases, we work with these 4, but the 5th is only on case-to-case basis when you run ERP HANA, BW HANA, CRM HANA, those cases. So let's look at the first one here, AN privilege, analytic privilege, developer not applicable. Because the developer
Hello.
check, check, 1, 2, 3. Hey, having this audio problem again. Okay, I think we're up. Audio check, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so right, so we are here at this Techie User 20, and we will go into this analytic privilege and assign our analytic privilege that we have created and see what happens at the definition. All right, so we're going to go there into this user definition. Meantime, let's also refer the Excel that we were looking at for the authorization metrics. So we were here at this Excel with a POC document that will help us to have a baseline outline on how a authorization matrix could be built as a template. So some customers request customers to work together with a consortium of security consultants or administrators or application developers to have this matrix built. A short reminder is to ensure that you have to have your authorization matrix signed off, and then you proceed creating users and roles and creating analytic privileges and other privileges. It's important because otherwise we'll not be able to freeze a user with a particular authorization object. It keeps on changing. It's important that you take a sign off, freeze it, and then develop it. Advice to all security consultants, basis administrators, including application consultants, HANA. Once you take a sign-off, additional requirements of change in the security pattern could be picked up or done or executed, delivered in the next phase of the project. So for the first phase, have this kind of a Excel worksheet with the metrics, build it, test it, sign off, and then proceed with it, go live. Okay, so we go back to the system here. We're going to go into the user definition. We're going to assign the analytic privilege that we just created. That was ZAP SCM code for US. Assign it here. All right. And then we're going to activate this user ID. User changed. And then we're going to go back into the package. Open the definition of the analytic privilege. Go here to the users and roles. Now we see the user with user name here in this definition. To this user, when the user log in into the HANA from the reporting tool, the user will be checked for the country code. Likewise, you can also assign it to a given role. Let's go back to security folder, pick up a role. Let's go with one of the existing roles. For example, let's go here, ERP power user. Go here to the analytic privilege. Assign this analytic object, ZAP CM code US. Activate the role. Close the screen. Go back to your analytic privilege in your content folder in the package. Open the definition of the analytic privilege. Go over to the cross tab and check here that we have this user and this power user role as a grantee or the recipient of that analytic privilege. So this user or users were grouped together in this role, power user role, whenever they try and log on to the HANA view for creating queries and report, that user ID will be checked in the background for country US. If not, not authorized. So we request everybody to practice after the session tonight or whenever you're free. And tomorrow we will learn further about the other authorization objects, what we have here in this Excel POC document with object privilege, system privilege, package privilege, and then there's another one called application privilege, how we create our own user IDs. What if we need to perform user integration with a single sign-on between an end user and a user in the HANA, or reporting user with HANA user for external user IDs, SSO. So we're going to learn those in our next session tomorrow. We are now open for questions and answers. I'll pick up the question from the chat box first. So the question here is, once we have a calculation view, it can be used for reporting to the user. Can these views be directly called from other web apps? Yes, it can be. So, for example, that you have a attribute view, analytic view, or a calculation view, which are all collected to your package. And when they're activated, it gets available in the SysBIC. Yep. So once it is available in the SysBIC, you can call that into reporting tools. You can call it other web services. You can call it into a universe. which is a BO universe, UNX. You can call these views directly into an Excel or SAP other visualization tools like Lumira, Predictive Analytics, SAP Design Studio for creating dashboards, and also the UI5 or other HTML5 coding. Even Java programs can also read these views, just like we read a view from Oracle or other SQL Server using various interfaces developed in the JSON, Java scripting, or other web applications. Yeah. So certain web developers or web application developers who are working with the HTML, Java, UI5 can also write their read or fetch command from the web applications or UI5 or even mobile apps and connect into the view and then read the view, attribute, analytic calculation view for the reporting apart from the standard reporting tools. Yep.
Hello.
Yep.
Yeah, Param, this is. Can I take your questions in the mic, or you will answer the chat?
Go on with the question. No problem. Yeah.
Yeah, Param, actually, regarding the just now you have discussed about the analytic privileges. What I can understand that this privilege will come into effect as and when in the reporting level, like when the BO reporting, when you're going to execute the report, then we'll have some, because every user is having a certain authorization depending on their region and all. Only then it will come into effect.
Yep. Only at the query time.
Okay, and one small question regarding the super user. You have used super user roles. You have assigned that roles. What there I have some understanding issue. What tech user 20 and super user? What exactly is the part it is being played there? Can you please recapitulate this part, please?
Okay, so okay, let's open definition here of the analytic privilege. So we go here to user and the roles. So we are assigning that authorization object to a single user or group of users through a role. So maybe that you have developers, you will have a developer role. Maybe there is a power user who is using this role for connecting from the reporting tool into HANA. So we collect user groups into a role, and then the role is assigned to that individual users. So that's the concept in the SNA. We will of course revisit this point in our next session with further details about user types, roles, standard roles, composer roles, custom roles, independent, dependent roles. So a role is a group of users, and what we see here, individual users can also have individual authorization objects. So the difference between a user and a role is a user is a single independent recipient user, and a role is a grouping of users. So if you go back here into the Excel POC document, a developer user will have a developer role. So there could be developer 1, developer 2, developer 5, developer N. There are 15 developers, for example. So instead of individually assigning the individual development rights to the 15 developers, we create a role to group all these 15 developers and just assign the role. So you create once, assign them multiple times, rather than creating multiple times and then assigning multiple times. So a role concept is to group together users. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
And
you are saying
every role will have individual combination of privileges based upon the user type.
Okay. One small question. And regarding the when you for examples, now we are using all these BO reports and all. So that particular you are saying that that particular restriction will only come into effect when you're going to execute the report, right?
Yep. Yeah. When not execute, start from the development to development of query, creating the report, generating the report, and then executing the report. All these 4 phases, depending upon the report type, will have a back-end control on which user is authorized to check which view at these 4 levels at the reporting layer.
But reporting is taken in the perspective of an end user, right? So the end user
Yep.
is going to he's going to use he's going to execute the report depending on the role he is given into, right?
Yep. So an end user could be a user who is doing self-service reporting. So end user creates a report, creates the query, combine multiple queries into one report, and then the user runs a self-service reporting. So possible that a user can also be a report writer. Other end users may be just a report user, not developing queries, directly only seeing the end result of that report. So depending upon the type of the end user, the authorization will still kick in for all those 4 layers: creating queries, creating report, generating report, and executing report.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Now let's go to the next question over here. Next question is, can you show business content? Okay, so the business content that you can check if you want to read extra information, you can visit sap.com/rds, where you have the business content. And in the HANA Studio, if you want to check, you have to refer the SAP package.
Yeah.
So when you go in there,
Basically, I wanted to just talk to you about that as well. That's what I was trying to find. Like yesterday we were talking about, standard extractors I brought in, and the model is created on them. So I was just trying to find where you can see those. Yeah. So if you can just show us one where a standard extractor is brought in as a business content, and if we can look at that model.
No, a standard extractor is not brought into the standard content of business content, because business content are only the structure. Standard content extractor are at the source and not in HANA.
Okay.
In HANA, we only see the structure, only calculation views, analytic and attribute views, only the structure part, which will be available here in the SAP folder, business content. And once you open it, you'll have multiple subfolders, and there you'll be able to see those standard content, meaning standard views, but not the extractor, but not the source system data. But what we have here is the front end design or intermediate design layer views.
So once we expand this HANA, we will see some models, and those models can be customized, and we can just create our own based on those, right?
Yep, yes.
Okay.
So,
is it possible before the end of the class, if you can just show one of them and just give us a quick walkthrough, or just for knowledge?
Okay, so what you have to do is, just hold on, you have to go into the SAP package. Let's go here. I'm trying to check. Okay, so you have to give me a moment. I'm trying to connect into because for the training system, it's does not have the business content, but I'm trying to connect with another system at the moment. I'm freezing the screen. I'm using another screen with another system. So give me 2 minutes. I'll check the password of that one of my other consulting user password. So I'm just going to check that. I'm freezing the screen now. Okay, so let's see here. If you guys can see the screen, I have SAP package here on to the left-hand side. And what we have here is the other subfolders. So if you can extend the BI content, you'll have here the CO, which is part of the FI for cost controlling. FI SD, for example, if you go here into SD. Okay, just hold on. I should have some data. I should go here. Yeah. EPM. I should have some of the business content, because the business content comes with a price tag. Customer have to buy it to be able to use the business content, and I don't have it here as well. So, but this is another system that I use. I used to have it. Let's refresh. Okay, we don't see it here, but I also wanted to show you how a standard business content HANA views look like. It will show the item level, header level views, attribute view, analytic calculation views, which is a part of the business content, and they are used for a use case called HANA Live, where we run the ERP running on the HANA platform. But that will be only available in this folder, SAP folder. But I don't have it here. That was just an extra info that I wanted to show, but it's not here. But anyways, if you're working with a customer and customer purchase the business content, because the RDS comes along with the price tag. It's not a free packet or free package. It comes along with the price tag. Customer have to buy it to be able to implement the business content. Otherwise, customer develop all those use cases from the ground up or from scratch. So this is here, but I don't have any content here.
Okay, that's fine. But so in other words, most of the time when somebody, gets to work as a HANA consultant, most of the time they will be doing their own modeling rather than using business content, unless it is exceptionally, exceptional that some customer might be using RDS, right?
Yep, agree. So in some cases, certain customers may only want to develop their own design. So in that case, we know how to build it. In some cases, the customer feels that the business content is okay to be implemented, and later they enhance it. In that case, they buy the business content for that LOB or for that industry sector. They buy it, they install it here, install it in the service marketplace, they download it, and they have a SAP package like the one we see here. And then after which they'll be able to see FI, SD, MM submodules, and then the views in there. And then what they do is they copy the standard business content using mass copy into their local folders, and then customize it further or enhance it further and then deploy it. So it could be a hybrid scenario where we use both business content and some custom development, or core development purely on our own. So majority of the cases is custom development, developing the views. That's what the HANA consultant generally performs, but maybe business content can also be used.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'll check and see if I can have the SAP because they are standard content. If I can export from another system and apply it here, let's see if we can bring that so that we are aware of how a standard business content look like.
Param, you mentioned that when you're defining the calculation view, If a calculation view is meant for using it for the reporting, then that's defined as a cube. And but if it is intended to use it in another calculation view, it can be defined as a dimension. The question is, if a calculation view is defined as a cube, that can be used in the reporting, but can that also be used in another view, in another calculation view?
Very good observation. Yes, answer is still yes, because if you have a calculation view that you intend to use both ways, one for reporting and the other for another calculation view where you want to use it as a participating, maybe you are extending that calculation view with another. So yes, we can use a calculation view which is defined with a data category as a cube for both reporting and also as a participating dimension with another calculation view, but not the reverse. If you've defined a calculation view with a dimension, but you want to use it for reporting, not possible. So, good question. Yeah.
Thank you. And the business content that you are mentioning, the customer has to buy it. Is that the case when the customer is implementing the ERP on HANA or for the reporting purposes also?
In the majority of the cases, it is ERP on HANA because standard content will only have ERP structures.
Okay.
And if the customer is not using SAP ERP, but they're using Teradata, in those cases, business content not required.
Okay. And also, Param, you mentioned that the SQL certified programmer. Certified programmer means by, is that certified by SAP or by other vendor like Oracle or?
Yeah, Oracle, SQL Server certification on SQL scripting because the same scripting is used again here in HANA.
And when you're defining when you're showing us the procedures or the functions, you're writing it, right? Are those procedures and functions that you wrote or you just showed us, is that specific to a specific calculation view, or are there in a central location where all these functions or procedures be maintained, like a library?
Right, so that is a central repository. So if you have created a procedure in a calculation view, or you create a procedure here at this location, create a procedure, whether it is created as a part of a calculation view or an independent procedure, it all becomes part of a central repository in that schema. And that schema is _sys_bic. So that procedure can be used or called by other procedures. That procedure could be called or used by other calculation views in the SQL script, or maybe from the SQL editor we can directly call the procedure. Hence, a procedure wherever it's created becomes a global object. That's why a procedure is also referred as a reusable function.
So it can be used in multiple cases.
Yep.
Okay. And also, Param, this is the last question. So, while you are showing the spreadsheet for the roles and authorizations, there are two rows. One is with the developer, and the other one is with the programmer. So, what's the difference between these two, developer and a programmer?
A developer is basically a data modeling developer who creates the views, packages, and programmer is on SQL scripting or maybe about programming, also working with the extractor programming likewise.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Next question from the chat box, if I can quickly pick it up. Yeah, business content we try to see, but it has to be purchased. Therefore, you can visit sap.com/rds. And remember that business content will only support SAP source structure. So if you're using a non-SAP business content, not applicable, hence it has to be custom built. Next question, being a developer, I can do all joins and final data set on HANA ABAP stack and offer as a service reporting. Yeah, it is possible with the SAP NetWeaver gateway that you want to call or join all of these into ABAP stack. So you have an ABAP stack and then plus a Java stack, just like what we have in other SAP tools on the NetWeaver. So either way, you can call an ABAP program in ABAP stack or call the ABAP through the gateway, NetWeaver gateway, and connect it as a service, whether it is a QoS, query as a service, or web service, or a SOAP service, or other third-party service like, for example, PhoneGap for Android and other iOS 6 platform mobile apps. These are all extra possibilities, especially for programmers who are working with ABAP who has an idea about Java, or Java programmers who have an idea about ABAP or SQL. You can use your own custom reporting interfaces or portals on the ABAP stack or maybe on the Java stack. Both are possible on HANA through the NetWeaver gateway, and then use it as a service, the reporting tool. Next question. How a typical customer does HANA POC? Does he buy the HANA license and then go to POC or get trial? Answer depends on the customer scenarios. You can send this email separately offline, but to answer your question right now, the pursuit of a prospect are as follows. 1. Offer free trials. So a user customer may want to say, hey, HANA does a lot of things. I have a scenario that I want to run on, so offer a free trial. Free trial could be offered from a SI, SAP, partners, even vendors, or other ISVs. Next, offer a test drive. Of course, free test drive. So the customer user comes back with their developer, their solution architect. They offer the scenario. They want to run some test drive. They have extracted some data. They did the masking on the KPIs, and then they run a test drive. So offer a free test drive. They like it. Offer a POC. Customer, remember, customers still have not purchased any license from anywhere. Customer had not purchased any appliances so far. It's so far just a trial, test drive, and then they like it, offer a POC. This is where you start to help the customer with your license, with your HANA license. If you're a consulting firm or a SAP partner, you should have a HANA license which you can offer on a trial basis for POC. Customer like it, then initiate or help the customer to procure the HANA license. This is done via SAP account team. So SAP account team will contact and reach out to those hardware vendors, IBM, HP, Fujitsu, Cisco, Dell, Hitachi, NEC, and VMware. These are the 8 HANA authorized hardware vendors. So then the hardware vendors come with a project bidding to offer their USP, unique selling proposition, for HANA appliance. Then customer selects the right vendor, meaning the hardware vendor, Certain hardware vendors today, for example, if you go with Fujitsu, they say, hey, we will give you a free RDS. You don't have to buy it, we're going to give you free. Hewlett-Packard, HP, says, we will not charge for your operating system DB software installation. It's going to be free of cost, the installation charges. IBM says, hey, we will do the installation in our factory, and then you'll have a free license of the GPFS file system. VMware says that we're going to give you a cloud interface as an open platform for your T&D, not production, but T&D, test and development. So each one of the vendors have their own unique selling proposition. Customer select to the bidding process a vendor. After the customer selects the vendor then go back to SAP for the licensing part. Contracting, subcontracting, all of the agreements done here with customer, vendor, and SAP and other SAP partners or consortium of consulting firms. Then customer are requested by or helped by SAP to go with a pilot, whereby the customer selects the scenarios which they want to implement in HANA, native or enterprise use cases, maybe on the cloud, whichever applicable. After which the POCs okay, pilots okay, with scenarios accepted, then customer go with a greenfield implementation, phase by phase. Audio check, audio check. If you can see the screen, yeah? So these are the steps, 10 steps to pursuit of a prospect. And then finally, you'll have your go live, and then of course, support, upgrade, thereafter, other activities. This is a common practice of from the pre-sale sales, post-sales perspective. I will be sending you this particular notepad. Next question. Are we going to cover procedure? Yeah, just an overview, just like what we have seen today. We will also check the procedure tomorrow. Next question is, RDS can be used for sidecar HANA implementation projects as long as we have ERP tables replicated. Absolutely, yes. Any extra consulting questions, advancement questions, please feel free to drop by an email, param.th.com, .209@gmail.com. Next question, what is the difference between native enterprise cloud? Well, native is these are extra non-related to the training syllabus, but native use case is where we have one HANA box of just a standalone HANA box, and then we use it for POCs and pilot projects, or T&D. On the other hand, a enterprise is used for the pilots or for end-to-end implementation projects, plus you're going to have multiple HANA servers with a dev, QA, and then a production. This is an enterprise use case. Either way, if you're running a native or an enterprise on the cloud, it becomes a cloud use case. Okay, on cloud could be done through a SAP cloud, IBM cloud, Capgemini cloud, or maybe the AWS, Amazon Web Services, or other host provider. So the customer buy a subscription based, maybe for a year or for 3 months for a native use case, maybe for enterprise, and then they export it into their on-premise from the cloud, then go live. Yep. So on cloud is when you have these systems hosted by another host agent or host provider. Any consulting or non-academic related questions, we can take it up offline. Please feel free to send an email here, param.th@2009@gmail.com. Okay, my friends, this is what we have here for tonight. Tomorrow's agenda is on the security, and then we're going to come back here to this POC project document and focus on the second deliverable, which is the SNA, and then go here into further authorization metrics, creating users, roles, user and role management, etc. All right, good night. Have a good one. We're going to connect tomorrow at the same time. Bye-bye for today.